HYROX is hard, so hard intervals make sense to put into your training. However, it's not as straightforward as you might think. How hard is too hard? What should you do when you're putting in these high intensity intervals that will actually make you better at HYROX? In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean about how hard an interval should be, how to define this, where to put it into your training program, and more importantly, what you should not expect these intervals to do for you and how they can actually hurt your performance more than it is helping your performance. My name is Rich Ryan. I'm a HYROX Elite 15 World Championship qualifier, 3 years now with a PR of 54.28 and a pro doubles PR of 48.31. So the info I'm going to share in this video has a lot to do with the science that is backed around training, but also a lot of my anecdotal experience from being an athlete and a coach. So before we get into the benefits and drawbacks of these hard intervals, let's talk about what I mean exactly when we're talking about this style of training. So these can be referred to as V02max intervals, anaerobic intervals, or like high intensity interval training. It could be like Metcon, it could be WOD. This is a very broad amount of names that we can assign to this one specific feeling of interval. So let's talk about what these intervals are and how to identify if you are doing these intervals. These intervals that I'm talking about now are your zone 5 intervals. So true zone 5 is something you can hold between 1 and 5 minutes. So if your heart rate monitor is saying you've been in zone 5 for like 40 minutes, there are a couple things that you need to consider. So true zone 5 is when your physical output is matched by your cardiac output. You might have a cardiac output that looks like it's beyond your zone 4 into zone 5, but you're going slower. So it's really not matching up with your physical output. So even though you might be in like zone 5 heart rate, the zone 5 that you're putting out in terms of your ability to be aerobic or anaerobic is not matching up. So it might not be the exact same. So it can be a little misleading when you're talking about zone 5 in a race setting or a big workout setting. Another thing, your hardware might just be wrong or your zones just might be wrong, because true zone 5 by definition is something that is going to be only 1 minute to 5 minutes that you can really put out physically before you have to slow down. So truly these intervals are not going to be longer than 5 minutes, or you're not going hard enough in them. So here's a few ways that you can take pacing into your hands when trying to identify if you are in the right zone when doing your anaerobic intervals, your VO2max intervals. Your running pace is around mile pace to 5K pace, depending on how much volume you're going to be doing within the workout. Your ski and row is between 1 and 2K pace. And on the Echo bike, I found that it's between 40 and 50 cals of a max effort. It's kind of the pace that you can aim for your zone 5 intervals. From a rate of perceived exertion standpoint, this isn't quite a full sprint, but it's like almost a sprint. If you were to do this work, it should be hard in about 30 seconds. And by the time each interval is over, you are happy that you are done. So I'd call this a 9 to 9.5 out of 10 on the RPE scale. Each one of these intervals should be able to be done repeatedly at the same output, so the rest is going to be long. A 1-to-1 work to rest ratio works really well and is a safe place to go. Or you can do a 2-to-1. So if you're doing a 5-minute interval, 2.5 to 3 minutes can usually get you back in time. But if you need more time, make it a 1-to-1 so you make sure the output is high enough that you can go hard and be in that VO2max anaerobic interval area during each interval. So how can these VO2max intervals help you in HYROX training? So these intervals will help you put out more power under fatigue. Each one of these intervals is going to be so hard that you are going to have to learn how to go faster under a great amount of fatigue. This is very valuable for the back portions of the race, in particular the wall balls and the lunges. It'll give you confidence that you can do hard things, heavy things, while experiencing a ton of fatigue. These intervals can also reduce your rate of perceived exertion. Because you're going so much faster than what you would typically do in a race, these intervals become really, really challenging. So everything else feels kind of easy when it comes to how fast it's going, the amount of burn that you're experiencing, how heavy that you're breathing. When you are going harder than the race effort, it's going to make the race itself feel a little bit easier, at least for a short amount of time. You will increase your tolerance to lactic acid byproduct. When we cross over this line and we become anaerobic, our body needs to create energy that we can use without the presence of oxygen. So the energy supply is lactate. And the byproduct, once we use lactate as fuel, creates acidosis in our blood, which is that really uncomfortable feeling that creates a really high level of fatigue. But we can become tolerant of this feeling when we experience it more. Also, we're training ourselves to be able to create a higher level of lactate so we can work in a more anaerobic capacity. So these intervals are going to help you create more lactate and also help you create a tolerance for this feeling, which could come in handy on sled push push, sled pull, lunges, wall balls, anything that's going to give you a high output in the actual race, this tolerance can be helpful. And finally, it's going to help you build more strength. With these intervals being faster and you could load things up heavier, you're going to be moving weight faster and heavier. Because the intervals are shorter, you can go a little bit harder. So you will get stronger by doing this style of training. So for those of you who are familiar with CrossFit in terms of a sport and training, they spend a lot more time in this kind of V02max anaerobic interval space than we do in HYROX. So if you have done CrossFit classes in the past, you'll notice that those are very hard, they're very high output. So you can accomplish this type of strength and endurance with CrossFit as a training modality. So how should you program these workouts for your HYROX training program? When programming these workouts, I suggest staying within 10 to 30 minutes of total interval time. Anything beyond that gets extremely taxing and you're probably not going to be putting out as much effort as needed to really hit the mark. And you're going to be floating back into kind of that zone 4, more of an aerobic style workout if it gets too long. And again, the rest should be longer. So 1-to-1 rest or 2-to-1 rest when you are building out these interval workouts. And I'd work between 3 and 5 minute interval sets so that you can have ample time to recover and you can still go hard within each one of these intervals. So these intervals will make you extremely fit, but there are some things to consider when using these for HYROX training that might not give you the gains that you're hoping for your next race. So the first thing, these intervals, they're not that specific to HYROX. We're never going to be going so fast that we are actually anaerobic for a long duration of the race. The only time that this might really happen is going to be at the very end at wall balls, and the fatigue that we feel there is more like global and systemic, and we're depleted as opposed to working without oxygen and having it be like this complete lactic byproduct takeover. It's really not specific at all to HYROX. So if you want to really dial in the feeling, these aren't going to give you that. These intervals can be very hard to recover from. It might not feel like you are needing to recover that much because the total volume of the workouts isn't extremely high, but the cardiac output and the intensity that is put behind this can be extremely taxing systemically. And what's really the hardest part to gauge here is how fatigued we are systemically. So it's not always straightforward. We're not always feeling like physical pain or just kind of run down. We might feel like we can do a lot of these workouts and still continue to go forward and make progress, but we are really taxed from a cardio standpoint and from a total system standpoint that it's hard to recover from these when you do these frequently. And it's worth noting that there is a slightly higher risk of injury doing these workouts. As the output is higher, the weight's going to be heavier, you're going to be moving faster, the fatigue might be exponential compared to like a slower, grindier HYROX workout. So it's worth mentioning. So because there are very specific benefits and drawbacks, it's important to place these strategically into your training program. I'd recommend to do this in the beginning of a block and at the end of a block. So I like to do these in the beginning of a training block because it makes me feel stronger, it makes me feel faster, and then when I start to load on more endurance work, I'm doing it at a higher work rate. So it allows my actual big chunks of HYROX work to be more intense, and then it can kind of stretch that out so that I feel like I can go fast for a longer duration. So for me, it starts with speed. It also ends with speed. And this is where that tolerance part kind of comes in as well. At the end of a block, I will do these maybe once a week so that I am working a little bit faster. I'm able to create a little bit more of this lactic tolerance, and I'm just able to feel like kind of fast and explosive toward the race itself. So I would say 3 to 6 weeks at the beginning of a block. At the end of the block, the last 3 to 4 weeks, adding 1 to 2 of these per week. And really the main thing to consider when putting these into your training program is the amount of time that they're actually going to take. Although these are short, it's still taking time away from working your anaerobic threshold and your overall aerobic capacity, which is going to be a better indicator of your HYROX results. So if you love these workouts and you're just doing them over and over and over, you might feel like you're getting fit, but you're going to come up short when it comes to HYROX because this event, it is aerobic. It's 60 plus minutes of continuous work. So doing work from 3 to 5 is never going to quite get you where you need to go. And most of us are limited when it comes to the amount of time that we have to train. So when we spend time doing V02max intervals, it's time taken away from doing aerobic work and anaerobic threshold intervals. So that's the main thing you need to consider is how you're going to fit everything in. And the first thing that needs to drop off when it comes to these high intensity quality pieces are going to be these V02max intervals. So if you want all this done for you, we have a spot in the RMR Training app. We have several programs that will systematically enter these V02max style intervals so that you can cut through this guesswork and the trial and error. You can just have it all done for you. Plus, we have a robust community of like-minded athletes in there sharing their experiences going through HYROX. So if you're interested in taking a look at what we got going on at the RMR Training community and app, take a look at the description in the show notes. And finally, I just want to make a quick statement about group classes and how this all kind of fits in. So generally speaking, group classes are going to be between 45 and 90 minutes, probably more in that 60-minute range. So by the time you do warm up, your intros, your prep, the workout explanation, you are pretty much left with 30 to 40 minutes of training, probably closer to 30. And by the time you try to get all this work done, the output is going to be pretty high. More often than not, group classes are going to lean more into these high intervals, so it feels like you're getting an awesome workout, because you are, but it's not super specific when it comes to HYROX. So I recommend using these classes sparingly for your actual HYROX training. But it's something to be said about having a social outlet, being able to learn, having coaches' eyes on you, that makes these classes extremely beneficial. So take this as a grain of salt, pop into classes here and there if you feel like they are helpful for you, but know that more often than not, you're probably gonna go into this like high V02 max interval area when doing group classes. So let's get out there, hit these intervals, and we'll talk to you soon.